You look shorter today, Lee.
Dude, what the did I do to you?
Like stand up straight.
Well, we work for a tech company, so I'm used to just being like, nah, all huddled over. I just need to go into the vector store and update training for this AI agent. Yeah.
Welcome to the show, where air takes the floor. Lee and Rich on the mic.
Welcome to the AI Guys podcast, where we make artificial intelligence easy to understand for everyone. I'm your host, Lee Dixon, and as always, I'm joined by the AI college dropout, Rich Swire. How are you doing today, bud?
Thanks for having me today.
Yeah, I figured we have to bring you in and educate you on AI a little bit. And that's kind of why we're going into our guest today, who is an assistant professor of instruction in the Department of Psychology at the University of South Florida, where she has taught online since 2012. She is redesigning her courses to intentionally integrate AI agents with a focus on ethical citation and transparent collaboration. Jen Gillespie, welcome to the pod.
Thanks for having me. I'm glad to be here today.
Yeah. And I know right before we all got started here, obviously, Rich and I are happy to dunk on each other and riff and stuff. So this is probably the most informal interview you might ever take as far as what you've been doing with AI. So feel free to let loose. Our 400,000 viewers now at this point will not come for you. They'll probably enjoy it. And we promise we will not send it back to the school with any colorful language that might be used.
Got it. Noted.
Perfect. Well, so Rich,
low standards here. Very low
extremely
standards.
low. I'm still around somehow. So this is perfect. Well, I want to jump right into it. We've actually done an episode and talked a few different times about AI and education. Obviously, from Rich and I's perspective, it's been more so on just the ideation of how it could potentially be used, and where we see a lot of pushback with Rich's, kids that are currently at that collegiate level and how they're using AI and how it's kind of taboo still. So we'd love to obviously just kind of open the floor, get a little background on you if you'd like to, and some of the things that you've been implementing with AI, and then take it from there.
Sure. I teach 3 courses right now for USF, and I'm in the process of redesigning all of them so that they explicitly require the use of AI tools. I call them AI agents. And I talk to the class about meeting your team of AI agents and then how to use it intentionally, and therefore how you can document it and cite it and share it with other people. So that's the journey I'm on, is redoing all of the materials and the way I approach the learning outcomes, but now making use of AI potential. That's
very cool. So what would you say, like right now, as far as your, outside of the fact that they're using it for your class, like when you actually have like a new cohort of students coming into a new class, like what percentage are familiar with the tools so far, like are using AI in general prior to coming to your class, would you say?
That's a great question. Some of that is to be determined because I will be launching these this fall. That would be a great, actually, like baseline question to include on the first day attendance survey, where you kind of find out what sort of exposure they already have to the tools. My guess from my just informal interaction with my live in-person classes that I had, where I started to slow roll this in, is that some of them are familiar with ChatGPT, but their use of it is more, I don't know what to say, like every day. Like I will use ChatGPT to like help me organize my grocery list or something. So I think that on the one hand, they might have some familiarity with it, but on the other hand, not at all, in terms of how do you use it in a documentable way for something that you need to determine authorship. And then I would say the other thing is Google NotebookLM is something that most people are not familiar with. So that would be a tool that would be more unique.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah.
They're using ChatGPT as their everyday kind of, quick reference and assistant, but they're not thinking of it past whatever they got out of it in that one moment. So
right.
And have no record of it.
Like, exactly.
That's the other thing. It's just gone. And so this is different. We have to be able to document what we did.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. It seems like that's where most people are, is they still think of, I think AI is kind of like a search 2.0. So they're very used to just putting a prompt in and getting a result. And that's just kind of the end of it. Right. And there might be some carry on conversation after that. But for the most part, I think the 20 or 30 years of using Google still is kind of like this kind of the behavior that people still use and kind of progress into ChatGPT. But then once you realize, like, evolving from that, getting to the agentic side, like you're mentioning some of the stuff that you're doing, you think of it more as a living and breathing thing where you're feeding it information, training it, manipulating how it what it's supposed to do and how it ultimately, and then over time becomes more of a relationship, and then is a tool, like you said, to build out much more robust outcomes. And similar thing that happens in the commercial world, I'm sure, very much it parallels to what you're doing.
One thing that I think was helpful to show my students is ChatGPT compared to the library has an AI agent that uses natural language models, but only searches the USF library. So that would demonstrate for them, both are large language models, but one has a defined universe. And then to move to Google NotebookLM, where you are defining the sources. So I think kind of teaching them, for me, that the Google NotebookLM, which I think I learned about from your podcast, is what helped me start to understand better what the difference is between Google and AI.
Yeah. So a lot of people in OpenAI, in the ChatGPT world, they kind of created these where you could create like GPTs, which are like your own custom little, I wouldn't call it an agent, but it's kind of your own little custom folder,
personalized
if you will.
thread.
Yeah. Similar to how Google kind of approached it with their Notebook LLM, was like, if you can consolidate all your information into a single area and kind of create your own little model or your own little collection of information, then you can query it and create new and derivative work from that. And then, of course, that's definitely a level up from your classic just ChatGPT generalized prompting. So that's cool that you guys are implementing that. So are you just using the Notebook LLM stuff, or do you also use like a ChatGPT type tools, or what's like the scope of tools that you're thinking about using for your class?
I require everyone to use Google NotebookLM, and they use it to organize their materials. And then obviously you can use it beyond that as well. I then invite them to use ChatGPT, Gemini, or the AI agent for the USF libraries is called Primo. And so then you explain to them the different intentions or purposes that you can bring. So just even one of those tools is only the tool. And then how are you going at it? What are you asking from it?
Yeah.
So for example, like I showed them in my own work, a Google Notebook LM I made where I had a library log that showed what I had done with the AI agent and searched, and then how I had identified the sources and then put that in the Google Notebook LM and then made metadata. So it's not just getting to use it on the fly to get something done. It's building something that you can share and it's traceable.
Yeah. Very cool.
And that's important too. I'm going to jump in here for just a second. That's really important to keep in mind that, I mean, when you start throwing around terms like metadata and, you're giving them this autonomy to kind of create this environment for them to work out of, I feel like in generations past, that becomes where the teacher and the professor within that space has just provide the syllabi and just said, like, this is the world you live in, take it or leave it. Like, this is how you're going to excel in my course. And where AI kind of just knocks that door off the rails is now you have this environment where all of this data can exist, and how are you going to use it to learn and just, benefit from what we're going to go cover in the next, 12, 16 weeks.
Yeah.
Yes, I like that they can do their own inquiry process, but then it has to be balanced against the learning outcomes for the course, et cetera. And it has to be scalable, gradable. I have one of my classes, almost 400 students with 10 sections with different course assistants. So in my heart of hearts, I want to just let everybody go free and play. But in the end, I have to reconcile what they did and compare them to each other and make grading decisions. But that's where also AI can help, because the quality of the rubrics that I can create and then share with them, I feel like I'm not limited. My mind can get pretty, detailed with what I want out of a rubric. Like, give me high, medium, and low examples of that rating. Like, I can start really bossing that agent around until I get a really nice rubric for the class. So there is ways to help with it, but it's still, in the end, you got to grade it.
Or going the step further with all, let's say that 400 student example is you have underperformers, pulling them out and trying to understand like where in their processes they're missing the mark, or maybe based on how they're leveraging the tools, you can make suggestions to them on how to improve that.
I like that idea.
See, Rich, someone likes my ideas.
I think
it makes me think of what I'm working on, something with policy vacuums, that because it's everything, like the summer class I'm teaching, things were already changing while I was teaching. So something like that, the policy vacuums and what you just said, because someone can be struggling because they don't understand, and their question could really reveal something that everybody needed clarity on, but nobody really could articulate.
No one wants to raise their hand and be like, I'm the idiot that doesn't know.
I love it when a student tells me I don't make sense. I really try to reward that behavior, because I'm thinking, could somebody tell me so that we can get this back in clear?
Yeah, no one's infallible, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, it sounds like, I mean, a lot of the innovation you're doing, is this self-motivated as like just, or is this something that you feel like in general, the tone of other colleagues within the college or even beyond USF are kind of in the same boat? Or where do you feel like, you're like breaking rules and on the edge of things? Or do you feel like most professors and general educational trends are moving this way? I mean, what's your gut?
I feel like what I'm doing is unique in my department, at least. And I'm very grateful that where I work, they are supportive of the innovation of it. And so then I'm meeting with them as I'm redesigning all of the classes, just to kind of check in, I guess, and make sure that what I'm doing is, for example, I had a nice conversation recently where there were questions about how to be able to show that people are not abusing AI, and what measures do you have in place? And so then when I explained my strategy, the feedback was, well, those are good mitigating measures in that you have various documentation required, et cetera, but you don't really have any monitoring. So then I realized I needed to have them like share their publicly available Google Notebook link, and then have like a random audit of those where you deep dive and look at evidence of authorship, et cetera, beyond just what we've uploaded as our submission. And that's where your idea about if somebody is struggling there, you could find out what's going on. Do they not understand what they're supposed to be doing in these notebooks? What's happening? So those would be some of the things that I'm working on. And then I am in the middle of transitioning. I will start the full-time assistant professor job in about a month. And up till then, I've been doing adjunct work. So all of the sudden, I have, all of these new courses in prep, and a big light bulb went off with my own experience with AI, where I looked at my classes and I realized that if I did not deliberately include this in my courses, then, I would always be behind it. So I just decided this was my chance. I was in the middle of launching all these new classes anyway and redesigning them anyway. Why not go ahead and just hardwire AI into it?
Yeah, it's interesting to hear some of the challenges you have, or at least like some of the feedback you're getting from others, and maybe some of the reasons why people aren't necessarily running, full speed into deploying AI, within the education world, is because of these concerns, right? All the concerns that you would have, not just in education, but honestly across all industries, where it's like, it's great that you can spin up and have AI and the power of that and give it in the hands of one of your users, or in your case, students. But then it's like the monitoring, the evaluation, how do you manage all of that? And these are all kind of the challenges that everybody seems to have, when it comes to deploying AI at any scale, right? If you're just using it as a single person, it's easy. But the minute you start adding, 10 or 100 users, and you want to think of it more as an enterprise or as more of as a collective, it definitely gets more difficult,
Absolutely. And like the idea too, like with my background in industrial organizational psychology, I started thinking about that I'm managing now multiple AI agents, and then I have to manage the relationships between the agents and the course assistants. Like it's a whole organization, enterprise, like you just said. And so at the point I'm in now, it's a very like heavy learning curve, but I'm hoping that over time it starts to have a stride to it.
Yeah.
So.
Boy, if there was only a product that would do all that, Lee.
Well, this episode has been sponsored by Rhea AI. Let me tell you all about it. No, but it is interesting because, I mean, you're in a different space than normally a client would come to us, right? Like it's a SMB to an enterprise level client. They have either one or multiple problems they're trying to solve. They have people within the organization possibly going in multiple directions, all doing their own thing. There's no standardization there. And then what happens is, some of these solutions might work well, but the minute they need to scale it across their workforce, then it's like, oh, well, Jim's using this and Sally's using this. And then everything kind of, falls back to, start. And then they say, well, now we need to bring it all here and then do it all again. And, that's never going to work with AI because of how quickly AI changes. Like legacy software, it's, we all have to come back to center, use this tool that we're paying for and do X. But because we've all been on the consumer level able to experience and experiment with AI, it almost, I think to me, comes in at a better position to where everyone kind of has a general knowledge of how these work, but they just need a path now, or at least a journey of this is how we want you to use it. So the fact that you're already going in with a mindset that nothing's really off limits, but here's how I recommend you follow this path. It's just going to, in this generation of students, I think really compress that knowledge and allow them to just jump right in to learning.
Yeah. So to kind of switch gears a little bit, one of the, I think, obstacles that education has in general, right, is hasn't been that often that you see something this transformative that enters into the world. That's kind of one of those things where it's like, whether we like it or not, it's going to permeate into our ecosystem. It's like, there's nothing that we can do to, we can try to like shut the gates and say no AI and have these like ridiculously over the top rules. The reality is that there's just absolutely no way. The cat's out of the bag. It's in our phones. It's in our devices. It's in our apps. Like you can't open up any app today without having some sort of AI. So it's kind of like, I guess, the evolution of the internet, right? When we went away from like going from the paper, I could imagine in 1994, the librarian saying no internet, and having that same kind of like, contrarian viewpoint of like
the Dewey Decimal System is dead now.
I actually in 1994 had I was a freshman at Purdue, and I had one of my professors try to tell the class about something out there called the World Wide Web. And I rolled my eyes and I thought, I will never need this World Wide Web.
Nope.
Exactly. Yeah.
Things have changed.
Yeah.
Big leather bound books are all I'll need.
Yeah.
It's like, no.
So with all that, considering, right, obviously it's happening, whether it's not if, just when for most organizations, how much is that going to have to shift? And it sounds like you've already you're ahead of the game a little bit on how you're thinking about different curriculum and how you're going to kind of present different ways of studying subject matter. But there also could be, like, for example, all the things that we used to measure, kind of result-based education, like whether it be a test or whether it be a paper. And of course, all you see is negativity out there around. It's like using AI to write a paper, using AI to cheat on tests. So how big of a fundamental shift is that in how you're going to teach, in the sense of, does this kind of push us over the edge of like what I consider maybe something that education, or at least in general, especially like secondary education, is kind of always been, we all know where it needs to go, but nothing's really kind of forced us to go there. So like human nature is just to kind of be complacent and continue to do the way that we've always done it, because it's safe and it's also bureaucratic, and who wants to be the guy that dies on the hill for this? But now with AI, does it feel like this is going to be like, is there a moment here where we will see education kind of rapidly evolve and not only just adopt it, but you can imagine in 5 years, 10 years, you're just talking about using AI as a tool that enhances and potentially changes current curriculum or current ways of doing things. But I could also see AI just coming in and being used to kind of reinvent and from ground up. Before, it sounds
like USF is doing a pretty proactive approach to it, just in the sense of what's going on here.
So what's your take on that? Like macro, do you think that, will we be looking at education in 2025 and 10 years from now and going, wow, it's completely new now? Like, it's completely different in 2035, or is it going to be more incremental, and will it just continue to be the same, and AI will just be yet another, icon on the desktop that people can load up and use, but not necessarily transformative? Like, what's your gut tell you?
Well, I'll start by saying, did you see the video of the kid at graduation showing off that it was ChatGPT and on his computer, and his joke was that was who was graduating, and everyone was cheering.
Right.
You're asking me about the change, and I don't know about K through 12, because that's that's apples and oranges. But within higher ed, I just feel like these students are out there in the world, and this is there, and it's happening. And so for myself, in terms of the beginning of the question about the learning outcomes and how that's going to change the assessments, I think for me, it's created very deep work to rethink think about those same learning outcomes, the same course learning outcomes, but a whole different assessment blueprint that is coming out of that is now acknowledging this reality. And so for me in my discipline with psychology, then what I'm emphasizing is what we have as a uniqueness to us is that we have authorship of scholarly works, and APA has said AI cannot be an author. And so therefore, what I'm trying to do is say it's not that there's no actual abuse of AI as long as you have documented it so that you are the author of your artifact. And then as long as you've been transparent and traceable, then you haven't abused it. There isn't too much. That's for someone to judge who's reading your work. They can decide. But as long as you have said, this is what I authored and this is what I did, and then just be transparent whether you need to cite it or disclose it. And I kind of train them on that, which is something I've had to learn from the emerging APA guidelines on this, because, our paper copy of the APA guidelines doesn't yet spell out all these different AI agent scenarios and the way we use them and cite it. So it is all covered in a way. It's just kind of an extrapolation of it. You have to learn it for new context.
Yeah, makes sense. Yeah. As long as you're saying, hey, I used AI to do this, and as long as the receiving end isn't judgmental about it and saying, okay, I understand that you're using it as a tool and then you're citing it and I can take that into context. Like certainly that's a first good place to start versus this idea of like hiding it and then playing trickery and then trying to find if they did use it and then playing gotcha versus, hey, yeah, this is a great tool. Now, obviously probably the good news is you're probably able to use AI to overcome some of the challenges that you're having, right? I'm certain that you're probably using ChatGPT and saying, hey, I got to teach this course, but I got to, but I'm going to tell them to use AI. And, how do we achieve that with the new outcomes, right? I mean, part of this is too
absolutely. One of your episodes when I first listened to you talked about how you would walk around and speak with your ChatGPT because it had the natural voice.
Right.
And so I use that ChatGPT in a lot of different ways, but after you said that, I had never noticed that, and I started doing that. And I literally, months ago when this all just kind of kicked off, began with interrogating ChatGPT essentially about, but wait a minute, couldn't they just fake that? Because I would say, well, make a reflection prompt. I was like, well, I could get you to make me a reflection prompt. Like I kind of had to go back and forth with ChatGPT to get it to train me even on how to use it.
Yeah. It's cool. It's crazy. It's very meta. We use AI to build AI, to train AI, to test AI. And then it almost becomes this like very circular snake eating itself. It's really, it's
well,
hard.
On that point,
Go ahead.
I'm sorry to interrupt. The workflows, though, that you were talking about before, not only do I need to be able to say, this is my author product that I made, and here's the citation of or disclosure of the AI agent as a student submitting my own work, but as we work together on teams, like whether you're talking scholarly teams or work teams, I would want, if my coworker is handing me something and saying, okay, it's your turn to take this on, and now you need to do this with it, I would want to know what workflow had happened with what agents for what reasons. So the documentation isn't just for APA ethics. It's the reality. Wouldn't you want to know if someone handed you something, what they had done behind the scenes to get to that point?
Sure.
It's being able to track the prompts that they use, the full conversation that led the AI to achieve that. And maybe even the instructional prompts that they use to build the AI to begin with, like the instructions that says, this is your role, this is who you do, this is what you know. Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, obviously that entirety.
It's even one layer deeper on the critical thinking side of it too, right? Like not taking anything at face value. Like I need to know how you came to this point.
Yeah. I think that's the one thing that people don't realize. Like when we train in AI, for example, for whatever use case that we're doing with our platform, there is a lot of expertise and critical thinking that the human, in this case, has to use in order to get the AI to the point where it is actually helpful. And I think that gap, I don't know what you describe that gap to be, but if I were to kind of put that into a bottle and sell it, I would argue that that's education in today's world and moving forward. Is this idea of knowing what you don't know and knowing what you do know, but also having the critical thinking to kind of guide that AI, because the AI has general knowledge, but it has a tremendous amount of knowledge, but it lacks context, and it doesn't necessarily see the expertise that humans gain with experience over time. If you could kind of go to like a person who worked in industry for 30, 40, 50 years, they have this kind of piece of knowledge that they've gained and created and gives them intuition and gut instinct that even if you quiz them on probably on the facts of what they might have learned in college, they probably get 90% wrong, but it's somehow congealed into this like magical orb where they become this oracle. And I feel like that, if you could get that put back into and give it to younger, people at the college level and beyond, that now you have this like really crazy transformation of how people learn and where they start in life. Because I think part of the challenge I think current generations have, my kids included, is that they have access to ridiculous amount of information at their fingertips, and that kind of formulates a behavior of, well, it's there, I can query it and I can get that answer, and for the most part, any answer they can get by their phone. But what they are trying to build, and I think what most humans yearn to have, is that oracle orb that only you get it through experience. But if you somehow, it seems like AI is almost opening up a corridor for us to be able to teach that in a weird way. And it sounds like you're kind of on that path to do that, where if they start really, now the lesson is less about getting facts A, B, and C right, or getting, querying X and getting Y as an answer. Now you're saying, I need you to critical think about this so that you can direct the AI to go that direction. And that's a very, I think, interesting kind of shift in how we're going to be hopefully teaching in the future. Yeah. It's kind of exciting, because I think if people come out of college with that kind of tool set and that capability, and that's their starting point, then you can see the extrapolation of that could be exponential as far as, we could be on the cusp of like a Renaissance type elevation of education.
To piggyback on that too, Rich, I think what we're seeing, and you and I have talked about this on other episodes too, as far as just like how social media was kind of like the worst part of the internet compressed over the last like 10, 15 years, right? Because it took us from actively engaging with sources of information to just consuming content and being like, oh, I learned it, but like you really didn't, so I think having this rethinking how a student learns, and it's not just, here's the course material I need you to understand over the next X amount of weeks, and like that's what you're judged on. It's, being able to get into the source material and find ways to leverage it to get the outcomes that you're expecting.
Right. And create derivative work, right? Like it's
exactly. It's putting the piece back on the fact that it doesn't matter at the end of the day. Like, you need to be able to understand the source material, but like how you're using that and how you're like leveraging it post, like getting it, is what's going to put you into employment. And what, like, it's not the Spark Notes, that 2.0 that I think a lot of higher education or different ways have kind of positioned AI of just like, they're just going to use it to, get the C so they get the degree. It's like, that's not really the case here.
I like the way you said direct AI, because to me that I've learned that AI
I'm 2 for 2, Rich. 2 for 2 right now.
Criteria empty. Like if you don't tell it, and by the way, it will let me give it too many criteria. This is what I learned. Like it will let me give it, it will just keep trying to satisfy me, and it will not understand that it
always wants to do deliver. A good job.
Yeah,
exactly.
Yes. It's a
and so I've learned in like leading AI, I've learned I have to bring the criteria, and I also have to bring like the scope, right? Because it'll just go.
Yeah, you have to be strict. You have to be strict with it. Yeah, it's exciting because I think AI definitely does one thing across any use case or any scenario that you want to look at, is that, as Lee mentioned, like we went from, we're naturally, I think, creators, but we're also creators when we're given the tools. The tools that we actually innovate or create for ourselves is what ultimately drives the next generation of creators. And I think we had like a 20-year, when social media came about, it flipped the script. Sure, there was some small number of creators that obviously created that content that we consume, but it actually drove a majority of us into a consumption behavior, because obviously the big boys are like monetizing our attention, right? But I think now if our attention is shifted toward being creators, because I do think I was 9 times out of 10 people that I meet want to be a creator, but there's no tools. There hasn't been a tool that's been out there other than like social, like other than Instagram. And now you're kind of forced to create to this very low common denominator, like pictures and video. But now with AI is probably the most magical tool that we've seen in the last 300 years, since the hammer and nail, where you can actually now become or a paintbrush, where you actually can become a creator again. And I think if schools and universities understand that, then everything will be so obvious on why they need to not only just be a proponent of and bring AI in and figure out how to integrate it, but should also be like the primary driver and educating our next generation and maybe even beyond on how to use this tool, because this is the new paintbrush. And if we could somehow put it in the hands of these young, brilliant people, like most kids over 18, 19, when I meet them, I'm like, man, you guys are way smarter than I was when I was. It's because they've got the internet, they've got all this. And I'm not sure that's saying much, but I'm saying like on average. But like if you give, when you give a 19-year-old or 20-year-old like my son or daughter AI and you tell them, build something or create something, it's absolutely crazy what you're able to do in a matter of minutes or hours with vibe coding, with all the stuff that like Jen's working on, all these aspects. And the faster we get it in the hands of our like next generation, man, it's really going to be nuts. And I think whatever exists today in the technical ecosystem, like the internet and how we look at it today and the social media, the few apps that we use for the majority of our time, I think are going to fade into the black very quickly. I think it's going to be boring.
What makes the tool unique is that unlike the hammer or the paintbrush, it's a tool that has variable output defined by the user's leadership and criteria. So it's a whole new, it's just so many options now, ways, like you said, that we can use the tool for different outcomes.
Yeah, very exciting stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I would love to keep this going, but I think what we should do is obviously, give you some time to get into the classroom and get some feedback and then bring you back for a second episode, sometime during the school year, if you're down for that.
That sounds great. I'd love to do that. Let you know how it's going.
Yeah, it'd be fun.
Yeah.
Thanks for your time today. Appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you for yours. This has been great. And I can't wait to continue the discussion. And for everyone listening, thanks again for joining us on this episode. If you haven't already, hit the subscribe button to stay in touch. Also, check out our Substack for more content, which we link to this episode to continue this discussion. Until next time, stay curious, stay informed, and we'll see you on the next episode. Take care, everyone.
Welcome to the show.